This hearing is called to order. This is the public hearing. The City Council Committee on Labor and Civil Service. The purpose of the public hearing is to hear testimony on bill numbers 161007 and 161013. I want to recognize for the record the presence of a quorum of the committee members. Members of the committee who are in attendance are to my left, Councilman Heenan, Dom, and to my right, Councilwoman Maria Quinones Sanchez. Are there any members of the committee who want to make any opening remarks? Hearing none, I want the clerk to read the title of the bills that are being considered today.
Bill number 161007, an ordinance amending Section 3B of an ordinance approved March 1st, 1963, as amended, relating to agreements to administer employee retirement benefits for certain quasi-public agencies under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 161013, an ordinance amending Title 22 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Public Employees Retirement Code to create a new plan entitled Plan 16 for certain employees, to expand the scope of DC plan to cover additional employees, to change contribution rates for certain employees, to amend various provisions relating to the Deferred Retirement Option Plan drop, and to make technical amendments. And amending Bill number 110443 became law September 15, 2011, to revise certain effective dates relating to the drop, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. Will the clerk also please call our first witness to testify?
Rob Dubow.
Thank you, Mr. Dubow. Good morning, and just please state your name and title for the record.
Good morning, Chairman Parker and members of the committee. My name is Rob Dubow. I'm the Director of Finance. I'm here to testify in favor of Bills 161007 and 161013, which would enact pension reforms as part of a comprehensive effort to improve the health of the pension fund. There's no larger issue facing the city's finances than its underfunded pension system. The general fund's pension costs have grown by over $450 million since fiscal year 2001. Rather than growing stronger while the city was incurring those increased costs, the system has seen its funding percent drop from almost 80% to 45%. Addressing the health of the fund is a key priority of the administration, and these bills are an important part of how the city can strengthen the fund. The administration is proposing a multi-pronged approach to improving the system's health. That approach includes putting more resources into the fund. Each year, the city has been contributing more than the amount required by state law, including by having the revenues from the sales tax supplement the city's contribution to the fund rather than supplanting it. We've been working with the city's union to change the contribution and benefit structure of the plan and improving the fund's earnings by modifying the allocation of its investments and lowering the fees it pays to managers. With the advice of the fund's investment staff and consultant, the board has been enacting those changes during the last year. As part of that process, the board continues to evaluate its managers and their fees to achieve the best possible returns at the lowest cost, saving almost $13 million in fees in FY16. The bills that the committee is considering today are focused on the second of the three steps outlined above, changing the benefit and contribution structures of the plans. Bill 161013 would enact the pension reforms negotiated with DC 33 to improve the long-term health of the pension fund. The bill would create a tiered contribution structure under which current employees whose pay exceeds $45,000 would contribute more to the pension fund. Employees with higher annual salaries would pay a higher contribution rate. Employees with annual salaries of $45,000 or less would pay nothing more. Employees earning from $45,000 to $55,000 would contribute an additional 0.5%, and at the top tier, the additional contribution would increase to 3% for employees with annual salaries of over $100,000. Those additional contributions would increase the assets of the pension fund over time. The bill would also create a stacked hybrid pension plan for the new District Council 33 hires. The stacked hybrid plan combines a traditional defined benefit for the first $50,000 of an employee's earnings and an optional 401k with an employer match for earnings given above that amount. The plan would be in place for all DC 33 members hired on or after August 20th, 2016, the ratification date of the collective bargaining agreement. The stacked hybrid plan would provide retirement security for our employees while also reducing the pension fund's liabilities. While the bill would only apply to members of DC 33, the administration has stated repeatedly that its goal is for these changes to apply to all city employees. If the reforms are applied to all city employees, the pension fund would receive an additional $142 million over 5 years, and its liabilities would decline by $48 million over the same period. At the same time, the sales tax revenues are projected to generate almost $190 million over 5 years. These reforms and additional resources would improve the city's funded status to 80% within 13 years. Bill 161007 clarifies existing practice and permits the board to enter into agreements with quasi-public agencies to provide retirement benefits for their union employees that follow the retirement benefits available to municipal counterparts at the city. And I actually have some technical amendments to clarify that bill, and there are copies of it here. The board currently enters into agreements to administer retirement benefits for the 3 quasi-agencies. In practice, union employees at those agencies receive retirement benefits that are equivalent to those received by their city counterparts. That concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. DeBoe. Let me just first start. I want to go back to page 1 of your testimony, and I just sort of, for the benefit of the public who is watching, so that they have a clear understanding of what you're describing. You talked about the first approach is putting more resources into the fund, and you talk about contributing more than the amount required by state law, and you're obviously referring to our MMO, and then you reference the sales tax supplement. Just for the record, explain to the public what you're referencing. What's the sales tax revenue? When did you get access to this revenue? How did you get it?
Sure. So the state legislature passed legislation that at first temporarily enacted a 1% sales tax for Philadelphia. When that tax was set to expire, it was renewed with the first $120 million going to the school district, the next $15 million going for 4 years to pay debt service on a borrowing the city did for the school district, and any amount above that going into the city's pension fund. That amount will grow each year as the sales tax grow, and will grow particularly after the debt service on the school district borrowing is paid off. We are making that payment on top of the required state payment, rather than using it to be part of the required state payment. So it adds additional...
The MMO is approximately how much would you say?
MMO this year, I think, is about 540-ish.
540 million.
I think, yeah.
So that required by state law, but the additional payments that will, in essence, help to ensure that the fund becomes and moves in a direction where we can become more healthy is in addition to that. And so we would decrease the unfunded liability, obviously, which is our ultimate goal.
That's correct. The city portion, the general fund portion of the MMO for this year is about $520 million.
520.
Yeah.
520.
Right.
And after the...
And then the sales tax, the sales tax is on top of that. That's an additional, we're projecting an additional $16 million.
An additional $16 million,
yeah.
Which you are telling us, based on the administration's projections, will increase as the growth of the sales tax increases over the next few years.
That's correct. By FY21, we project that'll be about $52 million going into the pension fund from
when
the
are
sales
we
tax.
finish the $15 million debt service payments?
I think the last year of that is FY18.
FY18,
Right.
we are finished making
Yeah.
the $15 million required debt service payments.
Right.
Okay, let me move to to number 2, you talked about changing the contribution and benefit structure. So in essence, it is plan design. For the general public, what have you changed in plan design? I know you talked about it, but just slowly go through it. Let them understand, what does the ceiling mean, the $45,000, the adjustment in contributions.
Right. So right now, employees in the pension fund pay roughly 3% contribution into the pension fund. This legislation for 33 would add an additional contribution based on level of salary. For employees making $45,000 and below, there would be no change. For employees making between $45,000 and $55,000, they would pay an extra 0.5%. So if they paid 3%, that would go up to 3.5%. For employees making between $55,000 and $75,000, they'd pay an additional 1.5%. So 3% would go up to 4.5%. Employees making between $75,000 and $100,000 would pay 2.75% in additional, and over $100,000 would pay an additional 3%.
Okay, so again, for the benefit of the public, I just want to note that the adjustments made to the plan design were negotiated with District Council 33, and so these are applicable to District Council 33 and its employees. And while the administration, while you have noted that this would be the goal of the administration in the future, the desired goal, negotiations with 47 and others have to be negotiated, so this does not apply to them.
That's correct.
Okay, finally, you mentioned something that we're very happy to hear about, and we talked about this. You talked about improving the fund's earnings by modifying the allocation of its investments and lowering fees to managers. So obviously, I'm hoping that you can just quickly talk about hedge funds and us sort of moving in the opposite direction. Can you just quickly tell us about that?
Sure. So hedge funds in particular, we've dramatically reduced our exposure to hedge funds. I think we're down to one hedge fund. We only have one left. And the reason we made that move is that we were not getting returns to justify their fees. In fact, the returns weren't good and the fees were high. So we moved out of that. We've actually moved more towards indexing, and our general approach is that the only time we hire managers if they show that their earnings net of fees would be higher than indexing.
Thank you. Finally, my last question before I call on Councilman Dom is provide us with a summary of the drop adjustments.
Sure. So Council enacted legislation to make some changes to the drop. In specific, members would have to wait 2 years past their pension eligibility age to enter the drop. So if they were eligible at 55, they'd have to wait till 57, or if they were eligible at 60, they'd have to wait to 62. In addition, earnings would be reduced from half of the earnings assumption to the T-bill rate, which is obviously much lower. There was litigation over whether we were allowed to make those changes without collective bargaining, and in order to settle that litigation, we and District Council 33 agreed that we would eliminate the requirement to wait 2 years before entering, but keep the lower interest earnings.
So you say, now, I'm looking at some briefing materials that we've received relative to the legislation before it was introduced in council, and you noted per settlement agreements with District Council 33 and 47.
That's
so,
right.
So again, just quickly for the record, clarify per settlement agreements with 33 and 47.
Right. So there were the agreement with 33 that was part of the collective bargaining agreement, and there is an agreement with the leadership of 47. And obviously there are some conversations going on about that now.
Okay. Councilman Dom?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and good morning. I have two comments.
Okay.
One is on drop, and one is on something in your testimony. Let me start with drop first. There was an article written, I think, yesterday. It was November 27th. I think that was yesterday. It says, by Claudia Vargas in the Inquirer, it says that 613 employees this year received $101.6 million in drop payments, averaging $165,000 each. And since 1999, we've paid out $1.4 billion in drop. And clearly, the Deferred Retirement Option Plan, this is a plan, just to make sure I'm understanding this, where you declare you're going to retire in 4 years, you get paid your salary, but you get benefits deferred, and you get a lump sum at the end, which amounts to maybe 40% of your salary, roughly?
Depends on how long you've been in the pension fund and what plan you're in. So it can vary dramatically.
So the whole concept of drop is, I'm having a hard time with it because I look at the President of the United States and they get 52 days to figure out their new job, and we give people 4 years basically.
Right.
So, and it says in this article, by the way, that council can get rid of drop. I'm told we can't. What is your opinion on that?
So, two things.
For new people, though.
My understanding of the original intent of drops was to retain employees. Employees who you were concerned would leave would stay longer because they had the drop benefit. Secondly, in terms of, I think I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to give a legal opinion, but I think the reason for the settlement in the 33 collective bargaining agreement was that there was some uncertainty about whether council could unilaterally make changes to drop.
Is there anything else, in your opinion, we can be doing to help this situation?
With drop, probably not. I mean,
okay. Let me call another comment that I want to highlight because I think it's very important. I think this is actually, from your testimony, this was the most important piece that I gleaned from it. And you talk about that if these reforms that we're presenting today are applied to all city employees, I'm going to read from your testimony, the pension fund would receive an additional $142 million over 5 years, and the fund's liability would decline by $48 million over the same period. It goes on to say at the same time sales tax revenues are projected to generate almost $190 over the next 5 years. And you say, this is the most important sentence in your testimony, these reforms and additional resources would improve the city's funded status to 80%, says within 12 years.
I have to modify that to 13.
13.
Yeah.
But we're at 45 right now.
Right.
And the hearings we had on fiscal responsibility, we were like at the bottom of the largest 20 cities next to Chicago, I think, right?
That's right.
And so this would put us towards the top.
Yes.
That's the most important thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dom. Councilwoman Sanchez?
Thank you. Good morning. For the record, one of the things that I also want to highlight that the administration also willingly paid an additional payment into the pension fund. Can you tell us the amount?
It was about $19 million.
$19 million. And where did those proceeds come from?
They came from our general fund. And we try to do that whenever we have the opportunity.
When was the last time we made a payment like that?
An additional payment? Well, if you look at the sales tax money, that's additional payment. We make them almost every year. If we can find it. 19 million, I think, probably a little larger than we've done recently, but whenever we can.
Okay. What are our projections in light of the renegotiated fees and payment schedules to our investors? What are our current projections?
Current projections for
Earnings for the pension fund.
For earnings, I think through the first quarter we were a little over 3%, and obviously annualize that out for the year, it'd be 12, but that'll go up and down during the course of the year.
What was our projections last year?
So the earnings assumption has been dropping each year. It's now at 7.75%. When we started reducing it, it was at 9%. And then we've been reducing it incrementally over the last 8-9 years.
And for the record, it's the conversation we've had. I just want to kind of put it on the record. If we do not meet our mark, is the administration going to adjust that figure this coming year?
So if we don't meet, I think we propose to continue reducing To gradually reducing the assumption, yes.
Is there going
Whether we make the mark or not, I think it's something that we're looking to do over time.
will that be reflected in our 5-year plan?
Yes,
So right now, our projections are 7% across the board,
7.75.
7.75% across the board. Okay. As it relates to the sales tax piece and our ability to get to 80% in 13 years, in order for that to happen, what are the 1, 2, 3 things that have to happen? We have to hit our mark, our returns, right?
Correct.
We have to make our minimum payment, which this year you said it was $540 million, and we expect that to go up over the next few years.
Right.
Over the next 5 years, what's the percentage that that's going up? Because isn't it like in fiscal 19?
So in,
up
hold on one second, let me
significantly?
get that for you. And the 540 includes the sales tax money.
Okay.
Without it, it's about 520. By FY21, the general fund pension contribution, the MMO portion of it would be $549 million.
With the sales tax or with?
With the sales tax, it's another $52 million.
And that's assuming, again, that the sales tax come in as projected.
Correct.
Okay. So I just want to make sure so that people understand this, just because this has been a moving target since I got elected.
Right.
And I just want folks to understand that there are 3 mitigating factors.
There are more than that, actually.
Okay.
So the actuary makes a whole series of assumptions in coming up with the projections that we use. One is about earnings, but he also makes assumptions about mortality rates, about how long employees will work, about where pay will go. So there are a whole array of assumptions. The earnings assumption is the one that gets the most attention, but any one of them can either have a positive or negative impact on what actually happens with the fund.
Okay. So earnings, mortality rate, at what age
What
people
employees-
take their retirement, then our projections.
What employees
and
are
then our sales
paid.
tax
Yeah.
piece. Okay. I think that's important for folks to understand because we're vying on a bunch of different things. And, again, this has been a moving target since I got elected. So I just want folks to understand, because when they hear it and they see these articles in the paper, they think we've changed the rules of the game here. And I think the fact that this council has taken some really difficult votes around the sales tax, both for education and our pension, really speaks to how committed we are to dealing with the pension obligation piece. Is something that we've talked about, and we're very pleased that Mayor Kenny has really joined that and been very focused on bringing that down, or at least a plan to get us there. So thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Heenan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just want to recant some of your testimony and just have a little more conversation about several things. One, when it comes to the sales tax, 1% sales tax that you said
Yes.
expires in 18, is that correct?
So the sales tax pays for 3 things. $120 million goes to the school district. Then there's
The
debt service on
service and
borrowing. That's what expires after 18. And then the remainder goes to the pension fund. But there's no expiration date on that.
Okay, so the obligations we're going to meet our obligations for the school district for the $15 million in 18.
That's the last year of it. That's right.
So the $15 million then gets redirected to the pension.
Right.
For the
So-
solvency of the pension plan. You
Yes,
don't want
so in our projections, we show the amount going to the pension fund from the sales tax increasing from $21 million in 18 to $41 million in 19, largely because that
to-
debt
and
service
then in 20,
expires.
I think you said. Or
Keeps going up right by 20.
52 million, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. All right, so that 15 million, I just want to, it didn't get lost in the larger conversation that the $15 million, once the school district has met its obligations, that $15 million will automatically go directed or be redirected to our solvency for our unfunded liability in our pension plan.
Right.
Which you already have projected.
Yes.
Okay, great. The J plan. There has been, J plan is the infamous albatross, I think, when it comes to numbers
Right.
in our unfunded liability. There's 2,600
Active.
and that's what is the total value of the J plan unfunded? Is that like $5 billion?
So the total is about 5.1 billion out of the 5.9 billion of unfunded liability.
Through the actuaries' assumptions, another 10, 12 years for that J plan to pay out its unfunded?
So the
Roughly.
actuary gives us an amortization schedule that has us paid off in the early 2030s. So it's about 17, 18 years to pay off the unfunded liability.
So with the changes we're making today, with the actuaries' assumptions through the amortization process and the obligations for the debt service for the school district, coming to end and going over the pension plan, with employees, more cost, how much of a jump do you see our current unfunded liability with this predictable plan in place?
So
From a 45%, 50% up to where are we at
project
now? and
getting
where
to
do you see us being?
80% in 13 years. We project getting to 80% funded in 13 years.
80% in how many years?
13.
13 years. Okay. Just want to restate that for the
Yep.
record. The settlement agreement we talk about with the drop.
Right.
Now, drop has been very controversial. Elected officials, we don't have drop. All right, we changed that law was it 2011 or 12? It's
For new elected,
for
right.
new elected officials, right? So, with that being said, the purpose of drop was my always view of what it was supposed to be intended for was a management tool, whether it was managed correctly or not. But the purpose was supposed to be for a management tool. Is that correct?
So
And like
always
instead of-
understood there were two parts. One was for employees, at least how it started was to retain employees who otherwise would have left when they hit retirement age.
Okay.
And then it also should have given the management benefit of knowing people were going to leave and being able to plan for that.
Okay, which I'm not sure if it was managed correctly or not, but I'm glad we're addressing it now. So the settlement agreement lowers the 4% guaranteed interest rate, and it rolls it back to the Treasury. What is the current Treasury rate right now?
Probably like a half, 0.65.
0.6. So it's a significant decrease
Yes,
in interest rate payout
yes.
on retirement. And the other agreement was rolling back because of the interest rate, rolling back the year of retirement back.
Right, so
2
instead
years.
of having to wait 2 years,
Does that incentivize employees to retire instead of hanging around an additional 2 years, or?
I think it could. I don't know whether it really will have that much of an impact, that difference.
It's tough to
in 2 years.
predict people's
Right.
thoughts, right? And
Yes.
whether they are or whether they're not. But the hope is that people would retire at their retirement age.
Right.
Is that correct? Which can quantify savings.
Correct.
Savings.
Well, yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
There's a trade-off, kind of the longer you wait, because you get more benefits, but you get paid them for a shorter amount of time. So for each employee, the impact on the pension fund of the specific retirement date will be slightly different.
Right, and the reason why we couldn't just roll back 4% to the Treasury is because it was a negotiated item through collective bargaining agreement, and it was being litigated in court.
So it was initially put in place legislatively, and at least the legal question that was raised was whether, even though it was put in place legislatively, whether changes had to be collectively bargained. And that's, I think, what was at the kind of the heart of the dispute that was settled.
Because I personally believe collective bargaining, that's where things are agreed upon, because there is, both sides management and representation. So this was agreed to roll it back. Definitely with DC 33 and 47 has agreed to it, but they're still negotiating their contracts as we go on, continue.
So it was agreed to with leadership of 47, and I think there's still some other discussions going on.
Well, discussions through the collective bargaining agreement, right? Contract.
No, I know what you're saying. I'm
Okay.
just not 100% sure of the status of that right
I have
now.
no further questions.
Chair recognizes Councilman Dom.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And one other question for you. We have all kinds of needs for monies in this government. And I'm understanding the school district is going to come short money in I don't know how many years, 4, 5, 6 years, $600 million. How do we make sure that we have a plan for the school district, as you've outlined a plan for the pensions, so we have the funding for the schools over the next 10, 15 years, so what happens in 5 years, they come to us and say, you know what, we need money for kids, you got to take it from the pensions, and this doesn't get accomplished.
Right. And the school district question, I think, is more complicated because the state has a constitutional responsibility to fund education in the Commonwealth. And I think we do need to do our part for the school district, and we have over the years. But we also have to make sure we're not doing it in a way that makes the Commonwealth not have to live up to its responsibilities. So I think that's a much more complicated question.
Should we be working on a plan for the school district over the next 10 years so we don't have to have this concern?
We should, and it should make assumptions about what the Commonwealth is doing too.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Dom, thank you for adding that very important information, and that's in addition to the $5 billion in infrastructure challenges that was just noted by the school district. So I appreciate you bringing that up for the record. Thank you, Mr. DeBoe, for your testimony, but before you move, I just wanted to note for the record that in your testimony, you noted that per settlement agreements with District Council 33 and 47, that is where the reforms of DROP were born, and they are included in Bill number 161013. And I just wanted to note for the record that we have here a settlement agreement, and we wanted to have the actual copy before we took action today, that we have a copy of the actual agreement that is made and entered into between ASME District Council 47 on behalf of Local 2186, Local 2187, and Local 810 in the City of Philadelphia, and it is signed by our City Solicitor Sozi Talante, along with Fred Wright, and this is dated 10/31/16 and signed by our City Solicitor on 11/2/16. And I just wanted to note that for the record, because we do have some other testimony that we are about to receive, and so I just wanted to note that for the record. So thank you very much.
Okay,
please stick
thank you.
around just in case we need to call you back. And will the clerk call up the next panel? And I don't want anyone to feel rushed, but I do want to note that we promised one of our members who has had a meeting scheduled probably for about 6 weeks out, and he has to go. We need to hold on to our quorum. So we're going to ask the clerk to call up the next panel.
Pamela Robinson and April Jagetz.
Thank you both, and can you please state your name and titles for the records, and thank you so much for your patience this morning.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Pamela Robinson, and I'm the newly elected president of Local 2186. Thank you.
Yes, and my name is April Jagetz, and I'm vice president of Local 2187.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to read for the both of us, okay? Good morning, Councilman Parker and members of the Committee on Labor and Civil Service. My name is April Jagetz, and I am offering testimony concerning Bill number 161013. Today, I deliver letters to the members of this committee, as well as President Clark, requesting that your committee take no action to include ASME Local 2187 in the drop provisions of this bill until such time as the membership of ASME Local 2187 and 2186 have the opportunity to review and vote whether or not to ratify this modification to its contract. As President Bob Coyle has stated in his letter to you on behalf of the Local 2187 Executive Board and 2186 Executive Board, the members of AFSCME District Council 33 voted to ratify their contract earlier this year. AFSCME District Council 47, Local 2186, Local 2187 has not yet begun negotiations with the City of Philadelphia. Our contract expires on June 30th, 2017. This change would be a midterm modification of our contract, which we believe requires the approval of the membership. We recognize that the city seeks to amend the pension ordinance in order to implement the changes in the pension which it negotiated with AFSCME District Council 33. However, changes to the drop have not been presented to the membership of our local. Therefore, Local 2187, 2186 is requesting that you take no action to approve the inclusion of our local in any pension changes referenced in this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Same thing? Okay. So it's pretty much the same as what the Vice President of Local 2187 said. But good morning, Councilwoman Parker and members of the Committee on Labor and Civil Service. My name is Pamela Robinson, the recently elected President of AFSCME Local 2186. My election occurred on October 31st, 2016. Today, I delivered letters to the members of this committee, as well as President Clark, requesting that your committee take no action to include AFSCME Local 2186 in the drop provisions of this bill until such time as the membership of AFSCME Local 2186 has the opportunity to review and vote whether or not to ratify this modification to its memorandum of understanding. As I stated in my letter to you, we recognize that the members of AFSCME District Council 33 voted to ratify their contract earlier this year. AFSCME Local 2186 has not yet begun to meet with the city yet. Our memorandum of agreement expires on June 30th, 2017. As such, this change would be a midterm modification of our contract, which we believe requires the approval of the membership. We recognize that the city seeks to amend the pension ordinance in order to implement the changes in pension which it negotiated with AFSCME District Council 33. However, changes to drop have not been presented the membership of Local 2186. Therefore, Local 2186 is requesting that you take no action to approve the inclusion of our local in any pension changes referenced in this bill. And I thank you.
So thank you both for your testimony. First, congratulations. This was our first time meeting here this morning. I want to congratulate both of you, on your new roles, and to thank you for your leadership in speaking out and making sure that your perspective on this very important issue is actually heard. Obviously, the legislative process regarding this matter has already been moving. It will be the intent of this committee today to move the bills today with a favorable recommendation, but I want you to be clear on what this will mean. This means that the bills will be ready for first reading on this Thursday. So first, and the protocol and the process is extremely important. Once we pass these bills from committee today, they'll be prepared to get first reading this Thursday and final passage the following week. So it is our hope that with the settlement agreement that we just referenced for the record that was signed by the president of 47, along with you in your respective leadership capacities in each of your respective locals, we're hoping that this gives you time to communicate, and hopefully when we move forward with this and council begins to proceed by Thursday, it is my hope that when I see you on Thursday morning, or maybe talk to you in advance of that, or you communicate with the president's office, that you will have had time to vet these issues and talk them through and have them ratified, as both of you referenced, by your general membership. So I wanted to just make sure you knew for the record what the process and procedure relative to council's action will be for the record. So movement out of committee, only first reading on Thursday.
If I may?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to have on record as well that the agreement and the contract memorandum agreement is with District Council 47 and Local 2187, Local 2186, and 810 as stated in the agreement. And historically, all presidents have signed all the contracts and memorandum of agreement historically before. So this is kind of unprecedented that the local presidents would not be included in the signing of this agreement.
Right.
Interesting.
And as you can see, Councilwoman,
Yes.
you can see that this was just signed by Fred Wright. So it didn't, so none of the presidents had any input as to, signing off on this document.
Well, let me just say that I'm going to have an optimistic perspective as a result of your coming here today, making sure that you put your testimony into the public record regarding this issue, that again, once you leave, I am hoping that there is room to get to the table, all interested parties, so that the process by which you, as respective leaders of the locals that you just referenced, working in conjunction with 47's leadership, that we find a way to comb through any procedural challenges that there may be, and that there is some sort of consensus. And I am hoping that when I hear from you Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, that you will be able to give a response on what your communication has been, and that it is in the affirmative and extremely positive. But we just wanted you to note for the record, from a procedural perspective, that this committee will simply be positioning the bills for first consideration on this Thursday.
Okay.
Thank you so very much for your testimony.
Okay.
We're going to ask Mr. DeBoe to please come back up to the witness table. We have one more question, Mr. DeBoe, for you from Councilman Dom.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just one more question.
Sure.
Or maybe not one more, but another question. The program that I think is the most positive news of what your testimony was, that is in 13 years, we're going to get to the 80% level. And that's going to be something we can document. And so my question to you is, we have 3 major bond rating services in the city. And our bond rating right now, from what we recall from the hearings we had, is we're, I think, the 3rd lowest of the largest 20 cities. Tell me the impact this type of 80% in 13 years funding will have on our bond ratings for the city.
Sure. So I think there are 2 major areas of concern with the rating agencies and our finances. One is unfunded pension liability, and the other is our fund balance. If we lay out a plan to attack one of those problems, which we're doing here, and then stick to that plan, I think that's what they would call a credit positive. And in their write-ups, they say here are things that could lead to improvements in your rating. Here are things that could lead to reductions in your rating. One of the things that they consistently say could lead to an improvement is if we do something on the pension front.
But as a bond rating service, whether it's Moody's, Fitch, or Standard & Poor's, if we were able to accomplish these goals with all the different parties, how quickly do they react in upgrading our bond rating for the city?
I think they would need to see over several years that we're actually sticking to the plan. So I don't think it's something that would happen overnight, but I think if they saw that this is something that we were committed to doing and that we were implementing as we said we were, that they would then, that might be when we'd see some positive movement.
Is there any way to speed that process up if we were to get to this program and have it locked in that this is what we're committed to and this is what we're doing to demonstrate to the bond rating services that we're serious?
Well, I think, the sooner we get to being able to apply this to all employees, the more positive it would be with them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman Dom. So, Councilman Dom, for the record, I want you to, although we're getting ready to conclude the public hearing, I want to allow you to make your statement.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Unfortunately, I have to go, but I wanted to be recorded as voting in a positive aye on both bills as amended and for their favorable recommendation out of committee.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair would also like to recognize the presence of Councilman O to my right, and although Councilman Dom has left his proxy, so to speak, you just ensure that we have made sure that a quorum in all of our process and protocol has been addressed. This concludes the public hearing. We will. Okay, I'm sorry. 1 second. Councilwoman, before we conclude, Mr. DeBoe, Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez has a question.
In light of the discussion we had earlier, I just want clarity. The agreement that the chairwoman noted between District Council 47 is pertaining to the lawsuit, right?
Settles the lawsuit.
It
That's right.
settles the lawsuit only, and it does not take the place of the full negotiations that the administration is having with District Council 47.
Correct.
I just wanted to note that for the record. I think it's important that people
Yes,
know this
thank
is
you.
about the lawsuit. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. DeBoe.
Okay, so this concludes the public hearing. We will now go into a public meeting to consider the action to be taken on the bills heard today. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez for a motion on the amendment to Bill number 161007.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I offer an amendment to Bill number 161007. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to the committee, and I move that the amendment be approved.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to Bill number 161007 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion carries, and the amendment to Bill number 161007 has been approved. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez for a motion on Bill number 161007 as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill 161007 as amended be moved out of this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to allow first reading at our next public session.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded that Bill number 161007 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. Bill number 161007 as amended will be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, with the request that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading at the next session of council. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez for a motion on the amendment to Bill number 161013.
We didn't take the amendment.
Just moving the bill.
We didn't take the amendment.
Thank you. We did not need the amendment. We have taken it off of the table. So with that being said, the chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez for a motion on Bill number 161013.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill 161013 be moved out of this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to allow first reading at our first public session.
That was 161013, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the amendment we didn't take.
No. We took out their stuff. We had our own amendments that were technical.
Oh, okay. Where is
We
that?
need to adopt.
Where are they?
It's just, that's the technical.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'll give it another one.
Okay, no,
Thank you,
let's just, if we can, we will just sort of go back and start the process for the motion on Bill number 161013 as amended, and the chair will recognize Councilwoman Sanchez for a motion on the amendment to Bill number 161013.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move for the technical amendments to 161013 be adopted by this committee.
It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to Bill number 161013 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it, and the motion carries, and the amendment to Bill number 161013 has been approved. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez for a motion on Bill number 161013 as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill 161013 as amended be moved out of this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to allow first reading at our next public session.
It has been moved and properly seconded that Bill number 161013 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it and the motion carries. Bill number 161013 as amended will be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, with a request that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading at the next session of council. Is there any other further business? Thank you. This concludes the meeting of the Labor and Civil Service Committee. And just want to note for the record that the question at hand regarding the amendment to Bill number 161013 was that the amendment was simply a technical one and not a substantive change, as we were considering when we first began this meeting. Thank you all for your participation.